What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of SRT Live. I am your host, Sean, with the Sean Richard Mortgage team here at Guaranteed Rate. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm excited to be back with you today. I was out of country actually for the last several weeks, got a chance to travel over to Cambodia, to Hong Kong. It was an amazing adventure, but I do miss home, or I did miss home. So glad to be back here with you today. I'm excited to bring you some pretty fantastic mortgage and economic and real estate information today. Lots of things going on in our industry and in our economy. So if you're a real estate agent checking this out, thanks so much for being here. We're going to get into some really cool stuff. If you're a homeowner, a home buyer watching this, then just know that we cover a lot of information that helps you with your future plans and helps you understand what's going on in the economy as well. So as always, let's dive into the week in review. Let's talk about last week. So lots of information that came out last week. We did get housing starts last week. And what was interesting here is that housing starts were up significantly over expectations, 200,000 to the upside. Now, this is an annualized pace, but this is a massive beat compared to what market analysts expected. So this is good news if for our industry, because more home starts are where we're going to see inventory come from. If you've watched me before, you know that I think that new builds are going to be where the bulk of the inventory comes from over the next several years. As a lender, I hate to say that. I've got a love-hate relationship with builders, but that's likely where that's going to happen. Now, we also heard from Jerome Powell, and this was pretty important because Jerome Powell came out and indicated that the Fed still sees a couple of rate hikes over the course of the rest of this year. Now, if you remember the most recent Fed meeting, they'd elected to pause on rate hikes. They kept the Fed funds rate the same, but if they continue to hike over the course of this year, that could be problematic for mortgage rates, not because increasing the Fed funds rate increases mortgage rates, but a lot of the sentiment in the market is that the Fed has done enough and they need to give it time to filter through the economic environment. If they continue to hike, that basically says that the Fed is saying, we don't really care what's going on in the economic environment right this moment. We are going to squash inflation, which ultimately squashing inflation does help mortgage rates, but there's got to be some time there for what the Fed has already done to take effect. So the Fed has indicated there may be 2 more rate hikes in the future, and we'll see how that plays out, but something that we're going to keep an eye on. Last Thursday, as always on every Thursday, we got jobless claims. Man, my nose is itching like the dickens today. We got jobless claims, both initial and continuing. Initial claims are individuals filing for unemployment for the first time. Continuing is people renewing their unemployment benefits. And initial claims actually came in relatively comparable compared to expectations, came in 4,000 new claims on a week-over-week basis versus expectations. And we were about flat from the previous reading to that. On continuing claims, we came in a little bit below expectations by about 20 some odd thousand. And that was also somewhat flat, actually just a tiny or slight increase from the previous reading. So overall, claims or jobless claims staying relatively similar, no new major movement on that front. But it's always something that we're watching so that way we can get the pulse of the labor market. We also got May existing home sales. Now, this is an important number because existing home sales makes up about 90% of our real estate market. You've got existing home sales and you've got new home sales. So existing home sales came in at an annualized pace of 4.3 million, which is relatively in line with the previous reading of 4.29 million. It was an increase over expectations, or I guess a beat versus expectations. Expectations from market analysts was about 4.25 million on an annualized pace. And this overall has been slowing. The sale of existing homes has been slowing on a regular basis. And year over year, we're down roughly 20%. Now, a big part of that, in my personal opinion, is the lack of inventory. You can't sell what you don't have. Now, here in the South, which includes Texas, we make up about 47% of existing home sales as of the month of May. And so, with home sales slowing, primarily due to inventory, at least we can hang our hat on the fact that we make up such a significant portion. So, although in general, the home sales are slowing across the entire country, because we've got the majority of the home sales here in the southern region, and a lot of those here in Texas, we don't get hit nearly as hard, or we don't see the impact of that quite as much as some of those other areas of the country. Now, that 4.3 million annualized pace gives us approximately a 3-month supply of inventory, which is below where the average, or where we need to be in a healthy market. Healthy market's going to be somewhere in the mid 4s, 4.5, 4.6 months of inventory. One other note on that, though, is that although 3 months of supply sounds reasonable, that's the homes that are on the market, but it doesn't account for status. So if the home is currently under contract, maybe in the option period, contingent, not active kickout, contingent, those homes are also included in that number, but aren't actually for sale. So the real inventory numbers and the real supply market is actually a little bit less. That 3% month supply is kind of right in the middle of what we've seen. We've been fluctuating over the last year between 2.5 months and 3.3, 3.4 months. So right in the middle. All right. So jumping to this week. Today, great day for home prices because we saw the Case-Shiller Home Price Index for year-over-year numbers come out, and we saw the FHFA, which is the Federal Housing Finance Agency, Home Price Index report. Both came out today. Now, Case-Shiller was year-over-year, and it showed that home prices on a national basis were down 1.7% year-over-year. Now, this was versus the expectation of 2.6%. So not nearly as big of a change as was expected. And this was slightly lower than the previous reading as well. So home prices showing declining on a year-over-year basis by small margins. Now, if we turn our focus to the FHFA Home Price Index, which was a month-over-month number, this tells us a different story. This tells us that home prices have been turning the page, and for the month of May, home prices nationally were up 0.7% versus 0.3% expectation. And this was slightly better than the previous month's reading for April, which was only 0.5%. But the fact that we're positive means that home prices are starting to rise again. And that's likely a result of inventory being low, supply having a shortage, and then demand in general has been relatively mild, but we are starting to see demand pick up a little bit. And I'll talk more about that here in a minute on what we're focused on. Right, so looking ahead this week, we've got a slow economic day tomorrow, but on Thursday of this week, we've got our jobless claims, as we always do. We also get our next reading of the annualized GDP, and then we also get pending home sales, and these are pending contracts on existing homes. So we're going to watch out for that as well. Friday, big day, we've got the PCE, or Personal Consumption Expenditure Inflation Report, coming out. As a reminder, this is the Fed's favorite measure of inflation, and core PCE, meaning stripping out food and energy, which are much more volatile, the Fed's target is bringing core PCE inflation down to 2%. So this is going to be a critical number, especially going into the next Fed meeting. And we also get the University of Michigan consumer sentiment. We get to see how consumers feel about the economy. So we're going to check that out on Friday. All right. So what does it all mean? What are we looking at going forward? As always, I feel like a broken record. We're watching inflation. Inflation is so critical to mortgage rate environment. You've heard me say it before, but inflation is the arch enemy of mortgage rates. So as inflation does decline, we will start to see mortgage rates decline. The hurdle is that inflation has been quite stubborn, and it's not coming down nearly at the pace that we had hoped to see it, which is why the Fed is considering additional rate hikes over the course of this year. So all eyes are going to be on Friday's PCE inflation report. And we'll see where that leads us going into next week for mortgage rates. As far as the second thing that we're really focused on and what it all means is housing. So you've heard me talk so much about the inventory being low, but the challenge on the other side of that coin is the cost of renting is significantly up versus last year. And this is pushing more renters into the buying market. If I've got to pay $2,000 or $2,500 to rent, well, why wouldn't I just go buy and do that? So the cost of renting is pushing a lot of people into the buying pool that might not otherwise be there right now. This is creating additional demand, albeit somewhat slightly, but any increase in demand is causing home prices to rise, considering inventory is relatively stagnant, relatively low. Home prices have appeared to turn that corner and starting to rise. We're going to see more evidence of that into the end of the year, especially if interest rates do start to decline along with inflation. And just kind of a quick story on my part, my personal experience is the last 5 clients that I've worked with for their mortgage, every single one of them has been competing for the home with other buyers. They've been in multiple offer scenarios. And those types of instances really only come up when we've got either an extremely hot property or we're in an inventory shortage situation where demand exceeds supply, which is where we sit right now. So the bottom line is really there's no bad market to buy a home. Ultimately, the only thing that's going to determine whether it's a good or a bad decision to purchase a home is really going to be your scenario. If we do I'll give you a quick example going back to 2007. 2007, if you had bought a home and you were in a position where you had to sell that home in 2009, 2010, then that would have made that purchase look like a really bad decision. Prices were much higher in 2007, market crashed, and you probably would have taken a loss selling that home in 2009, 2010. Let's take that same home purchase in 2007, and let's say that you had the ability or you were able to hold on to that home and you sold it in 2021. Well, you would have been able to sell that home for probably almost double what you paid for it in 2007, maybe even a little bit more. And so that would have been a phenomenal time to buy a home. Same exact market in 2007, but the difference between a bad time to buy and a good time to buy didn't have anything to do with the market, had everything to do with the buyer's situation and the timing of when they were either forced to or wanted to sell that home. So, short story, it's never a bad market to buy a home, but what's really important is to make sure that you have a conversation with your loan officer and talk about your specific scenario, understand whether it makes sense for you in your scenario to buy a home in the current market. All right. Well, I'm going to share one last thing with you before I get out of here today. A little bit of update on mortgage rates, what they've been doing. So I'm going to share my screen. Oh, we want to see me too, maybe. I don't know if you want to see this ugly face here. All right, so I've got mortgage-backed securities. And as I said before, you don't need to know a whole lot about mortgage-backed securities, but what you do need to understand is that green bars means rates are going down, red bars mean rates are going up. And as you can see, and we'll even go back here, which is roughly May 22nd, apart from this little spike here, rates have been trading, mortgage-backed securities have been trading pretty sideways for the better part of a 5 weeks. So what does that mean? It means rates have been relatively stagnant. They obviously, the rates came up in this little range here. Actually, let's do this. We saw rates climb with mortgage-backed securities dipping here. But then we rebounded a little bit, and then we've just simply traded sideways. So rates have been relatively stable, and we're waiting for some sort of news or economic impact to push rates into a new direction. Hopefully, for you buyers and you real estate agents out there, that economic impact is inflation coming down, which would cause rates to come down as well. But we've just kind of been trading this range. Now, as you can also see, it's been a volatile range. Although we're trading sideways, it's been very up and down on a day-to-day basis. So on any given day, it could be a relatively decent size swing. But that's also why it's more important to make sure that you're working with a loan officer that understands the market, understands these pricing fluctuations, and can help guide you to the right timing when locking your interest rate. All right, gang. Well, that's what I've got for you today. If you're checking us out on the Powerhouse Real Estate Facebook private group, I just want to say thank you so much for being an incredible part of our community. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button so that we've got economic, real estate, and mortgage information at the palm of your hands. As always, thank you so much for joining me on this episode of SRT Live. I'm your host, Sean, with the Sean Richard Mortgage Team. Have an incredible rest of your day.